Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey there, it's Debbie Potts doing a new edition of Real Thoughts with Debbie Potts podcast on the Whole Athlete Show, where I'm talking to guests on Mondays. Wednesdays, I'm trying to do more health coaching and talks with Peter Defty to talk more to you about how to become a fat-adapted athlete. And I'll be doing more health building information for you to learn how to improve your performance and longevity. Then Fridays, as I get organized here after closing my fitness studio and going to Hawaii for 2 weeks and finishing my exams to be an FDN Practitioner, Fridays will soon be the time where I will interview you, listeners that want to share their stories, come on the show and just maybe ask me questions and talking about how to be a fat adapted, low carb athlete, how to train in the off season, but getting people as yourself listeners on the show on Fridays to share their stories. As I was just in Hawaii, obviously for 2 weeks, I could have stayed longer, but needed to come back and start this new journey of mine, focusing on how to coach the whole athlete to be low carb, fat adapted, but also how you as an athlete can improve your health from the inside out. So the cellular level, we really want to optimize the mitochondria function, improve our hormone balance and our immune function, digestion, detoxification, our energy systems, and our nervous system, and really get out of being that sympathetic dominant athlete or individual. So as I finish my FDN Practitioner exams, I will be doing more talks on what I've learned and sharing that information with you. And today is going to be one of those days. I'm going to talk to you as a kind of semi-client, talk to you about how we work as a health detective and how do we resolve metabolic chaos using 5 different functional labs. I'm talking about how we don't treat systems but work on improving all body systems to work together, bringing it back to optimal level. So as you may know, my personal story I shared in my book called Life is Not a Race, you can find on Amazon. And the holistic method manual I created in 2015. And all this kind of goes with my own history of being an endurance athlete, being a small business owner, being a go-getter overachiever. It's really hard to do it all, especially if you are more genetically prone to not deal with stress very well. Some people deal with it better than myself. And this accumulation of stressors impact our health from the inside out. So as I started my journey as a personal trainer 25 years ago, I became interested in health along the way as I became Ben Greenfield's superhuman coach back in 2011. I started that. Then I got into Paul Chek's program called Holistic Lifestyle Coach. And then I got into my own interest becoming chronic fatigue, adrenal exhaustion athlete myself. Technically, it's not the adrenal, so you'll hear me and others correct all the time. It's not adrenal fatigue or adrenal exhaustion, but it is the HPA Axis dysfunction, which is confusing. But really, the adrenals aren't the only problem. It's a whole chain of events that happen above that. Just like when we talk about digestion, leaky gut, pathogens, everything starts north, and north is your brain. So even with adrenal chronic stress issues and excess cortisol and cortisol dysregulation, it starts up north, the brain, hypothalamus. And that hypothalamus talks to the pituitary gland, which talks to the adrenals to respond to that stressor. So we can't just blame the adrenals dysfunctional. It's a whole communication relay system or team that responds to that stress. And anything too much, as I said in my book, Life is Not a Race, gets to be toxic. Anything that we do nonstop becomes chronic, becomes a domino effect in our body and creates dysfunction. Dysfunction in one area is going to cause dysfunction in all areas. So what we'll talk to you today about and on the show more and more is what we say at FDN as practitioners is Reed Davis claimed, So this word metabolic chaos is his word. He terms kind of the HPA dysfunction and cortisol dysregulation is really this domino effect of internal body systems breaking down, creating this milieu of chaos. So metabolic chaos is what we're looking at, how to resolve that. Where is it coming from? So we have external stressors and internal hidden stressors that you do not know about unless you test. And that's what I will be doing with my one-on-one coaching program. That's 90 days or longer, 6 months ideally, because you need to retest after 90 days. Ideally. And it's a self-treatment program. So we're not diagnosing anything specific, but we're identifying those areas that are out of alignment and bringing it back to homeostasis with the right healing protocol. So giving us more clues with the metabolic chaos causes or contributors with lab testing. And what we do is clinically correlate all that information together with your health history. I'll look at your genetic reports using DNA Fit or other programs and put that with your lab test. And it's so fascinating to me because it makes so much sense when you see it on paper, when you see, here's your metabolic chaos scores of all these questions I ask in a form, what your main complaints are, rate them 1 to 5, and let's see what they were in the past and see what they are now. And then let's do these 5 main labs and see what those results are. And a lot of times, as I write it out, kind of look at your hormone balance, your immune system, and your detoxification system, your digestion system, and your digestion, detoxification, and energy, and your nervous system. It's all connected. And so many doctors and other practitioners just give you, say you go get your hormone test and do your labs on your cortisol and your hormones, and then they give you hormones. Well, it doesn't tell you anything about why are your hormones out of balance. Why is your cortisol too high or too low? Why is it not at optimal level? And the ranges doctors give you are not even based on healthy athletes, healthy people at optimal level. So we're not just going for you to be in that yellow zone. We want to be in that green optimal range. So the lab results that you'll get from your doctor for where they suggest being are not the same as what we'll tell you with our FDN ranges based on our labs that we order through our medical program. So that's what, long-winded, 8 minutes later, telling you what I'm going to be doing more on Wednesday, because I think a lot of athletes just focus on training, and maybe nutrition is becoming more obvious, and a lot of people are gradually becoming more curious about the fat adaptation process and being a low-carb athlete. But what we're not talking about enough is, how is your liver functioning? Is it congested? Is your detoxification pathways working right? Or is it overloaded? Are your cells being stressed too much and you don't have a balance between your antioxidants with your oxidative stress, which chronic exercise impacts this tremendously. Digestion function is everything to our whole health. So if your digestion is off, you probably have dysbiosis, you probably have a leaky gut, which is contributing to all these different chaoses in the rest of the body, even skin issues, joint pain, slow recovery, weight gain. It's all associated together. So what I'm doing is being a health detective, working with you as a client to figure out, all right, what's going on? What are your main complaints? Where are we going to start based on this, all this information we can collect, all this data, and put it together? So many people, as I said, are just looking at just your cortisol, just your hormones, DHA, and your estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. But giving you supplements for that by itself isn't going to fix what is going on. And you may never identify really the one thing because it's all interrelated. So when things off, they all get off. Your body systems get all out of whack, as you might have read in my own story. So metabolic chaos is connected to so much. So let's start from the beginning. When we start as a client and as your practitioner, we're going to go over kind of the steps of the program. So what I will explain with a client is looking at their test results. So I'll send everybody their information first and might just start with 2 main labs. So we might just start with the hormone panel, BioHealth 205 will order, and then we'll start with the test. It's a urine test. It's super easy to do, and go from there hopefully into the other 3 tests, which is GI stool pathogens test, and then working on a leaky gut intestinal permeability test, seeing how that gut wall lining is doing. And then from there, we'll go into MRT, food sensitivity lab, because as you'll learn more, we can't just look at leaky gut and treat leaky gut because we still don't know other contributors to causing that stress in your gut wall lining. And as we'll get to, it's pretty amazing. Your health is your wealth, and your gut is connected to your brain, and your gut's connected to your whole body system. So if we're eating foods that we're sensitive to and we're reacting to, we don't know what's contributing to irritating that gut wall lining. It could be a pathogen, and a pathogen could have come after your immune system was down because you didn't have that full army protecting your inner core, your digestive system, and the guards were down. So more gut bugs are going to be able to get past the front door because no one's guarding that front door. So this is why we need to look at everything and treat everything all at once and nothing specific because of this example. So what is FDN? Well, what I do is go through big, huge questionnaire forms, and I'll incorporate some nutritional therapy forms in there too. So we look at symptoms and maybe what they're related to, and go through your health history, and then we go to labs or the 5 labs to get started. So I really want people to do the 5 labs because eventually you'll have to do the food sensitivity, the GI pathogen test, and the leaky gut test, because doing the 2 tests itself we still need to get more information because they'll give clues that there's something else going on. So we do the BioHealth 205, or eventually the Dutch test I can do. And then we'll do the BioHealth 101 test, which will tell us a lot of information as well. And then we'll go create a 90-day protocol and some supplements for you to follow. And we use the DRESS protocol, which is working on your diet, your nutrition program, working on your rest is R for DRESS, and that's your sleep, and working on exercise and your stressors, external, that you can see what you can control and not control. Let's work on identifying those energy robbers, and then the supplements to bring your body back into homeostasis, to add that support to what's out of alignment. And then we probably need to go order some additional tests from that, but you don't know until we get there. So what we look at is the main health complaints and how they're related to your lab tests and symptoms. So say, for example, your main health complaint is your digestion. You're having problems. Maybe you have to run to the bathroom all the time. Maybe you feel bloated and gassy. So all these different symptoms, but you don't know why. And maybe you've tried different supplements. Maybe you've tried acupuncture, different practitioners, but you just can't get results from it. Nothing's helping. But I think there's a certain point you need to find alternative solutions, because if you've been doing this for years, say you haven't felt yourself for 10, 20 years, well, life should be enjoyable and living it to the fullest every day. So why we wait so long to get help is pretty amazing. It's like you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So don't you want to optimize your health for today and live today to its fullest, because who knows what's going to happen around the corner. It's not in our control. So if your digestion issues are stopping you from doing what you love, could be your exercise, workout sessions, you're not able to do them anymore because you just don't have the energy. Or maybe you don't want to eat out in public at a restaurant because you know you're going to have to run to the bathroom, or you're going to have gas afterwards, so you're embarrassed to be around people. And this stuff happens. Maybe people don't talk about it, but it's common. A lot of people have digestion issues, and this is so prevalent in our society as endurance athletes and athletes of all levels because of what we eat. We were taught to eat this high carb diet, eating throughout the day and small meals throughout the day, snacks and everything sugar and vegetable oils and processed foods and all this extra junk fillers in the food. So no wonder why we have digestion issues. And then most people are eating in a stressed out state because they're multitasking, trying to eat lunch while they're at work or on the go while they're driving their car because they're trying to fit their training sessions in. And I want people to focus. In my coaching program, I do this with my group. Goal is to eat mindfully, not mindlessly. So we want to be eating. You only are allowed to eat if you're sitting and focused on eating that food and tasting it, chewing your food, enjoying it. How many of people you know or yourself eats always on the go? They're just always doing 10 things at once. That's most of us athletes that are trying to fit in, especially triathlons, that you're fitting in 3 sports and doing yoga, mobility work, and strength training on top of that, swim, bike, run sessions. It's hard to do. So if you want to get better, as I said, you have to almost reach rock bottom. You've tried everything, nothing's going to work. But to do the work, and I said this in my book, I figured it out after writing my book, that I was blaming all these practitioners and naturopaths and doctors for not figuring it out, not helping me. Well, you that has these challenges and areas of opportunity needs to be motivated. So on a scale 1 to 10 being I'm super motivated, ready to do everything you tell me to do, and I'm going to take ownership for this journey, this health healing rebuilding program, you have to be a 9 out of a 10, or else I'm not going to work with you. And most people probably won't either. You have to be motivated because it's not an easy pill that you take to fix your digestive system, because it's not just your pill to heal your gut and take that prebiotic and probiotic. You need to work on the holistic method, the sleep, the stress, the mobility, the digestion. Gut health isn't just about taking supplements. It's about eating in the relaxed parasympathetic rest or digest nervous system. It's about chewing your food. There's no magic pill to fix everything. There are supplements to help nourish your cells and provide you the many missing minerals and nutrients that our body's needing to get back in balance and support it and guide it back to health. But we have to work on all that. Hydration, drinking half your body weight in ounces a day is a lot for a lot of people. Having that water that you filter in your house in the refrigerator in a bottle, so you can just grab and go, put some sea salt in it, get those minerals. And the most important thing I think people lack is gratitude, taking time out to be happy and laugh and play and write in a journal at night and be thankful. I had to do that coming back yesterday from Hawaii for 2 weeks and coming to Seattle that's dark at 7:30 in the morning, and it's that time of year. The days are shorter and it's darker and it's raining, and I just want my ocean and my dolphins and my rainbows and the blue sky and warm weather. But I can't be there, and I'm here, and that's the way it is right now in my life. And I'm going to be grateful for the colors of the fall trees and these maple trees that are this brilliant red, and just enjoy what's going on in your life. Find those positives instead of being negative Nelly. So that's where you can't find that magic pill to fix everything. So you need to be motivated to heal and rebuild your own self. No one can do it for you. No one can put you to bed and get you off your iPhone and your iPad and Facebook and Instagram, Twitter at 8 o'clock at night. So you're offline 2 hours before bed, and put you into bed and make sure you're asleep by 10 o'clock. That is your own duty. There's no pills for that. No supplements will do that. It's you. So a lot of people feel like they couldn't get help from other practitioners when they come see a FDN practitioner and get health coaching themselves. And they're still suffering from these issues as digestion and energy, feeling fatigue, maybe weight gain. But as an FDN practitioner, we don't focus on symptoms. We are working on looking at everything and helping you as a health detective to solve the crime of chronic stress and metabolic chaos. Stress, as I said, is influence, internal hidden stressors, and those external stressors that contribute or lead to malfunction in your body. So we want to end this cycle of trial and error that most of us have been in for years, that they haven't felt their best for 20 years, 30 years, because they keep trying different things out. It doesn't work, and try something else, and just get on this nonstop cycle of trial and error. So as FDNs, we're not focusing on treating your lab results. As I said, I'm not going to give you pregnenolone and testosterone because I see your lab results are low in your hormones. So we're instead treating everything instead of one thing. And instead of looking at your symptoms, we're going to look at everything as a general health building program using that clinical correlation and the DRESS protocol, working on your nutrition, your sleep, your stress, your exercise, and the right supplements for you. So we're working on unraveling and resolving metabolic chaos, that disruption in all body systems, because we get that metabolic domino effect. And while we do that, we end up identifying the healing opportunities to help your body regain normal function. So to do that, we're bringing it back to a state of ease instead of dis-ease, and keep working together and get your body to restored back into that homeostasis. What it is, FDN stands for, the F is the functional, respecting within body with innate intelligence of the body. D is for diagnostic, to help identify those healing opportunities. N is for nutrition, not telling you exactly what to eat, but we're working on feeding the cells, tissues, and organs to get those body systems all back to homeostasis. So it's an opt-in program of self-care. As I said, I'm not doing the work for you. I'm helping guide and support you along the way to heal and rebuild your own body, because you're going to be motivated to fix it and to feel better, to get to your optimal health levels. So we don't take a medical approach. We're not doctors. We don't diagnose anything. That's the important part. We do work in a non-specific manner to help identify those healing opportunities and those underlying causes, versus what the medical treatment will give you, drugs, as a lot of my clients do, seem to get drugs prescribed to them and get surgery. If it doesn't work, take it out. So my guide's just to help you along the way and get you there. So the 5 functional labs will work on the hormone, the immune, digestion, detoxification, energy, nervous system, as I said. And those stand for those hidden internal stressors that we don't know about. And create that DRESS protocol to help you in your new journey and health transformation program. So what we use is physiological aspects of metabolic chaos chart. And I find that really interesting. It's what we used to call adrenal fatigue, adrenal exhaustion, but how it's more the HPA Axis dysfunction and what are those weak links. So everything's interacted. So if we have something, it contributes to metabolic chaos, or metabolic chaos contributes to that. So it's a result of or contributor to creating chaos within the body systems. So a weakened state of health is left unchecked. So if you don't do anything about it, it's going to lead to symptoms downstream. And treating only the symptoms lead to worsening of the underlying disease state. Symptoms may be far removed from the causal factors. As I said, might be a pathogen in your gut, but you might be feeling headaches, or you're having low back pain or something. It could be anything related to gut function, related to inflammation, immune system down. So it's all interconnected. So this chart we show people how your metabolic chaos can be contributed or related to different elements. So your neural tissue health, your endocrine system, your fat and protein metabolism, your ability to detoxify, your inflammation is your escanoid modulations. So those omega-3 fatty acids and those different essential fatty acids to help pro-inflammatory and be balanced with anti-inflammatory. We've got carb metabolism. So as our glucose homeostasis gets out of whack when we have chronic stress because your cortisol's increased if there's low blood sugar. If you're in emergency response, your cortisol goes up and it will make more blood sugar. And usually if you're low carb, you don't have those carbs. So your body will take protein, convert it into the liver into glucose that you can use. So what do? We lose muscle mass because we just had gluconeogenesis. We also, part of metabolic chaos or a result of metabolic chaos or contributor, loss of bone health. Muscle skeletal health is important. Connective tissue turnover. Your neural tissue health, if you have brain fog, cloudy thinking, if you have sleep issues and mood issues, that's all related to this metabolic chaos. Endocrine function, your hormones, your thyroid, your adrenal hormones are related to your stress hormones and your sex hormones. They're all connected. And your enzymes through your pancreas, those are other hormones, the insulin and glucagon. So it's all connected, right? You can't just treat it. I think it's a good information, didn't say that right. If there's good reminder how it's interconnected, if one thing's off, they're all off, is how many people get told they have low thyroid. This is a huge example of sources of metabolic chaos or result of metabolic chaos. So if your body is under stress, remember the HPA Axis, hypothalamus to pituitary gland to adrenals. Well, your HP, hypothalamus to pituitary gland, also communicates to the thyroid. The body prioritizes emergencies. So who's going to put on hold if your adrenals, if you're under stress? Your thyroid. Other thing is your liver, if it's congested, your thyroid T4, free T4 is converted in the liver into thyroid, your T3. There's receptor cells in your receptor sites in the cells. You might have conversion issues because the liver converts T4 to T3 into the active form. Well, what if your liver's congested? So the enzymes in the liver have to make this happen. So what if you don't have the enzymes? Liver also makes reverse T3, and that can't be reactivated back to T3, but reverse T3. So if your liver is not functioning well, you're going to have thyroid issues, and your liver is connected to your pancreas and your adrenals. There's a whole relationship we talk about in nutritional therapy called your PALS. P is the pancreas, and the adrenals, and the liver. So they all are impacted if one is off. If one's overworked, the other one's overworked. If one gets overworked, the other one's underworked. So it's just get congestion and dysfunction all around. So another thing is I've learned that the liver makes additional inactive forms of the thyroid from T4 and reactivated by the gut flora. So the gut flora is involved in that thyroid conversion. So if your gut's dysfunctioned, which most people have dysfunctional gut flora, and the permeable gut wall lining, so the mucosal layer is damaged and the tight junctions have space between them, so we create this whole leaky gut from our stressors or contributors to stress. So then you have gut dysfunction. You might have low thyroid as well because gut dysfunction can decrease 25% of the conversion of T4 to the active form of T3. Crazy. So gut dysfunction, parasites, and other infections produce endotoxins, the LPS that we've talked to Karan a few times from Megaspore Biotic to talk about LPS, the toxins. Endotoxins can decrease your TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone, causing or contributing to low thyroid. And those LPS endotoxins that are the bad guys from gut bacteria, the negative gut bacteria, so more LPS can disrupt your T4 to T3 conversion, your thyroid conversion. And plus, those T3 receptor sites in the liver can be disrupted as well. So instead of just taking thyroid medication, we should look at the whole picture and look at your metabolic chaos, doing these 5 functional labs and look at all of it and work on improving your hormone level by working on getting rid or eliminating or decreasing that hidden internal stressors, that malfunctioned body systems that are contributing or causing a result of metabolic chaos. So if I'm confusing you, I have this all in notes so you can read my notes, but it's just the point is thyroid medication doesn't help figure out why your thyroid's low. So I would just take that in account. I'm not a doctor. I'm not prescribing anything. I'm just saying you need to look at the whole athlete from the inside out, because gut function, liver function, your digestive system, your stressors on your HPA axis all need to be working optimal level if you want to be healthy. So taking a pill to fix that and a pill to fix that, something else doesn't fix everything. And it's probably going to be recurring. So we don't treat anything specific. We don't treat symptoms. We don't diagnose anything. That's a really important part as an FDN health practitioner. So we give you a metabolic chaos card and we look at these scores. And then what we can do is see how that was in the past of metabolic chaos, all those different ones I talked about: endocrine, your neural tissue, your musculoskeletal health, cell health, your carb metabolism, your inflammation, detoxification, fat protein metabolism. All of that can be improved. So we look at all these symptoms related to each of those categories in a metabolic chaos chart so we can track, all right, here's your symptoms now. Let's add up the points and see if they get better next time. So it gives you a little more visual of where your metabolic chaos vital void, so to speak, is resulting in. So we can look at the function of each category and look at kind of overall. So I like to write everything out, look at here's your metabolic chaos, for example, endocrine category. What symptoms do you have in the endocrine category? And then let's look at your neural tissue health. And, on a scale 1 to 5, which ones were a 4 and a 5? So say neural tissue health, you rated number 4 or 5 was absent-minded. Your concentration is difficult. You decreased ability to handle stress or pressure. And then the musculoskeletal health category, maybe you rate high, you have pain in your joints. You sprain or strain your body more often. You have more stiffness and achiness. You have trouble metabolizing carbohydrates. You crave sweets a lot. Then we can look at the inflammation markers, detoxification, your fat and protein metabolism. So we look at all that together, and then we can use that information to correlate with the lab results once you get it back. So the first lab test we start everybody on is the BioHealth 205, and that's the one that's going to be more your hormone test. So we can look at your hormone results and see where you are today based on those labs, giving us that big picture. So we're looking at HPA Axis function. We can get the circadian rhythm from there, the hormone balance, cortisol DHA ratio. We can find out from that if your hormones are, your cortisol's more over your DHA, so you have more a catabolic. Cortisol dominance can be more catabolic, so more breakdown, versus DHA is more building. So you have to have everything kind of that yin and yang, that balance of sympathetic nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system. So same with the DHA and cortisol, we want them a little more in balance, and having too high of cortisol could result in a catabolic state. So you have more breakdown, and you start to see that when you look at your lab results, and we clinically correlate that with your main health complaints and what we said, the metabolic chaos scorecard, and put all these lab results against that. And then you can get a big picture and you see, now I get it. I can see that happening. So we use those labs. We look at more information here. It was really interesting how much you can pull out of one lab test. But as we do the cortisol test, we can see your cortisol rhythm. So see what your cortisol is measured 4 times during the day. And we can see get a lot of information from this. So I can see from your cortisol, I want to get that sheet out. We can get a lot of information about your energy throughout the day. So a lot of times people wake up tired, maybe their energy is best in the day, perhaps they are wired but tired at nighttime. So we can collect all this information at nighttime. So say we do your lab testing and your cortisol in the morning is really high, which it should be somewhat high. We give you a graph, your cortisol and melatonin go up and down in relationship with I think of the sunset and sunrise. So in the morning, the cortisol should be at the highest point. But again, it's that Goldilocks effect, not too high, not too low. That lunchtime, it should be a little higher, and then afternoon, it drops down a little bit, and then the nighttime is the lowest part, and then our melatonin should be opposite. The melatonin should rise at nighttime. So when we do your cortisol test, it's a 4-point test that we do throughout the day. So we don't want to do a blood test for this. It's just one marker because we don't get any of this information. We want to see what's going on with your body different times of the day. So if you're higher than higher normal in the morning, well, that's an indicator of something going on. And if your cortisol is higher in the afternoon, like noon, and then afternoon, and then nighttime, we can clinically correlate that information with your symptoms. So for example, if you wake up in the morning and you're tired, or maybe you're feeling amazing. Well, if your cortisol is higher than normal, you might feel like this. I feel amazing. It's best time of day, most productive because it's higher than normal. But it's a sign of your blood sugar may be up higher, and might be, if you're under stress, it might be normal response to stress. But if it's high, you might have some leftover activity of gut bugs at the nighttime period. And there might be, if you do early morning saliva test to test your cortisol, it might give you some information there. But if your cortisol is lower than ideal, then they might not be responding and indicating of HPA Axis dysfunction. So we can get a lot of information and collect clues to help identify your healing opportunities from just even these labs. But again, we still need to do the other labs to really get a definite picture of what's going on with you. So if you're higher than optimal level in the morning, your morning cortisol might provide clues to overnight activity in your immune system. And higher blood sugar is an indicator of your cortisol going up higher. So that gives us information of, motivation to do a pathogen test, the GI pathogen test, seeing do you have gut bugs in there? What's going on at nighttime that's actually raising that cortisol and raising your blood sugar? Because immune activity is usually higher at nighttime when the cortisol is lower. So then at noon, if it's elevated and you're under stress, that's normal. But when we have allergies and sensitivities in the environment, or you might have food or blood sugar issues, maybe blood sugar dysregulation, you might have your blood sugar go up after you eat because you're reacting, or your heart rate will go up after you eat foods that you're sensitive to, which is why one of our 5 labs we recommend everyone taking is the MRT food sensitivity lab, which will be a great indicator of foods that are creating an internal stress or contributing to stress to your body, which will contribute to gut dysfunction, to irritating that gut wall lining and disrupting the whole system. So we'll discuss more later in another podcast about the DRESS protocol and how to measure your blood sugar. We've been talking a lot about Keto Mojo lately and how I have all my clients test their blood sugar in ketones first thing in the morning, fasted, before they eat an hour or two, and then after they eat their meal, and then at nighttime. And just do that for a month to just kind of get an overall picture of what's going on with your blood sugar and also what impacts your blood sugar. So you'll definitely see if you have a stressful experience, even sitting in traffic, that your blood sugar will go up. So that's why stress management is a really important part for people trying to be fat adapted, because every stress response is a blood sugar response. So it's really good to have good stress, but Goldilocks effect, not too much, not too little. So good, healthy hormetic stressors that we talked about doing the HIIT training, doing the hot, cold showers, doing fasting, doing, what else is there? Like the cold tubs, all those are good short bursts of good stress, hormetic stressors. It's the chronic stress that's not good for us. So having a gut bug is chronic stress. Having foods that you eat every day that you're sensitive to, reactive to, is a chronic stress. So we measure the cortisol in the morning, noon, and afternoon, and a nighttime. So if the nighttime cortisol is too high, you can have trouble falling asleep. If your cortisol, because your melatonin's down low when it should be up. So that's an important indicator. And looking at hidden clues throughout these lab reports, looking at things that, okay, we looked at all these symptoms you have. Well, let's look at one test and then we'll collect more data of the why. We're always looking at the why, or I am. So the nighttime, if it's below range, that's going to give us information. If it's above the range, it'll give us even more information. Why someone isn't sleeping? Well, if their cortisol is super high, we got to look at that. So, because we want the melatonin up and cortisol down. So we want to look at the cortisol pattern throughout the day. So we have this range that fluctuates during the day. Then we also want to look at this cortisol to DHA ratio and the DHA to cortisol sum, or DHA and the cortisol sum. We want it in this correct range. And so the range that we use in FDN, again, as I said, are different and more narrower than you'll get in traditional doctors and naturopaths might use still the medical ranges. We use smaller range. For example, your nighttime cortisol, the labs say between 4 and 3. We say between 1 and 2. Your noon levels should be between 3 and 6 versus 2 to 7. And the morning cortisol lab ranges say 7 to 22. Well, we say between 10 and 18. So we also add up these 4 different measurements and take the sum of that. So it's called the cortisol sum. And that's, say, you add these up and you're 25.7. Well, there's a range that we can find out which phase of HPA dysregulation are you. So if we look at, all right, I've got acute range, the sum is less than 30, and that would put me in acute state of HPA dysregulation. So everything's more elevated. You're kind of thriving high because you get this high adrenaline, high cortisol output. You can last a few years. I probably did that myself before I went to the next phase. So the next phase, if your cortisol sum is between 16 and 30, you are in what I've been for years and still healing from, compensatory. You're dealing and surviving, but your vital voids are getting lower, your vital reserve. And then if you keep living life, which I did this, living life as a race until 2013, I was probably more in the so-called exhaustive phase. So your cortisol sum is below 16. So then your body can't keep up with your demand and everything gets kind of broken. And then you start to see more fatigue and you have that catabolic breakdown. Your muscles are disappearing and you're softer and you can't recover from workouts and you're just feeling tired because you can't get good sleep and you're just a mess. And that's what happened to me. So we don't say adrenal exhaustion. As I said over the years, is kind of the progression of HPA axis dysfunction and cortisol dysregulation. So the first phase is normal. Kind of we adapt. We have that hormetic stressor, that good stress called eustress. And then we keep going, but we have more. That beaker stress keeps growing. The cup gets fuller and fuller. Well, you start to have attempted adaptation. That's acute phase where we have a lot more stress coming along and it starts to accumulate, but you're thriving, you're staying up there, and then you only can stay there so long. So you become the next phase because your life doesn't change. You keep getting more stress. You have that chronic stress that doesn't disappear. So we can be in acute phase for a long time, but if you keep having those stressors that are not identified, like having H. pylori in your gut, and maybe you have another bacteria infection, or you have blastohominus, which they tested on me, which you get from water. And I said in my book, I bet it's from that horrible triathlon swim we did in 70.3 World Championship in Henderson Valley, Vegas, where the water was not to be swum in. It was brown, and I'm sure I got some blastohominus from that race because my immune system, which is 90% in your gut, was weak. I had depressed immune system because of too much of everything in life. So it's all connected. Who knows what came first? I could have had that blastohominus infection and then had that going on for a long time. And so that could have been my contributor to metabolic chaos and disruption and everything else, or either way around. You don't know. And you just got to treat everything because it doesn't work to just treat the results. So then if we're in compensatory, we just kind of get through starting to believe everything's normal. And the doctor, you go get looked at, your cortisol sum might be still in that normal range, but you're not, because we look at your symptoms and you're having all these different fatigue issues and weight gain issues and lack of recovery issues, and you're not normal range. You're actually on the other side of that bell curve, and you're in the compensatory range. So again, if we keep going and we're still not figuring out what's going on, well, we're in the compensatory to exhausted phase. So it's really important to kind of see this visually, the chart I have. If you want a picture of it, I'll put it in the show notes and put it in a blog, but it's really important part. So say if this client's sum is 25.7, then I can draw a line 25.7 across. You can see where it intersects with the bell curve for the distress predominance and finding that cortisol sum against common progression of chronic stress. So we're talking about that chronic stress disease, and we don't know those internal stressors, guys. You can go on for years and you don't know until you test. That's what I did. And everyone I saw when I was trying to get help was testing the results. Nobody was doing what I'm talking about, testing, looking at everything. So say you're in the compensatory phase, and you probably keep trending towards exhaustive phase if you don't stop and get a hold of what's going on internally and do these testing. So we might think we're normal, but we're not. And getting this whole snapshot of your cortisol level 4 times during the day is so important to look at instead of just the 1 time a day. So you might be trying to feel better by doing gluten-free diet, taking supplements, getting acupuncture, and it's not helping because you're not looking at really what the reason is. And then there's people that their doctor says, you have a thyroid problem, you have Hashimoto's. Well, I'm not a doctor and I don't diagnose, but I would say, if you're still not feeling better, I would look at the bigger picture of why is your thyroid not functioning. And there's a great book on that. Why is my thyroid results not normal? It's an excellent book. So if you live life as a race, and your chronic stress doesn't stop, then you just keep progressing in the HPA progression to exhaustion. So it's really a good motivator to take control of your health now and not wait too long like I did. And this is why I'm stopping personal training full time. I'm not running my fitness studio anymore. My goal is to help people like you, if you relate to what I'm saying, to help get out of this progression to becoming exhausted, because you can stay in acute phase for a long time and then suddenly you just break like I did March 2013, and I was in exhaustion phase and I've gotten back compensatory, but I'm still not back to normal, sadly. But hopefully closing my fitness studio will help some of that stress. All right, so let me wrap up and just talk about this lab. Then next week's show, I'll talk about the other lab test to find out your oxidative stress, your ability to digest protein, and your liver congestion by measuring your bile acids. So a couple more things about your HPA Axis dysfunction, taking your cortisol test. We get a lot of information if your cortisol's too high, too low, and then we see these different patterns. So we look at your other hormones are tested here. So we know we've got cortisol dominance often for people because their cortisol is too high or too low or out of ratio with your DHEA. So we're in a catabolic state, so breaking down instead of building up, which is why I have my coaching clients do more strength training instead of chronic long distance cardio, because that's going to be more breaking down versus lifting weights. Building strength is more that building up we need to improve our DHEA, as well as other supplements like maca helps. But DHEA is a hormone as a cortisol made in the adrenal glands, and it's normal to change as their stress response. It's supposed to work with cortisol to help keep it in balance. So cortisol is said catabolic, breaks down the body to make blood sugar, and DHEA is anabolic, and it rebuilds the body tissues and other elements. So based on your age, you want to be a certain range. So for example, if you're a male, age 30 to 44 age, we want your DHEA to be in a range of 7 to 22, and that's optimal. But it's crazy, the lab results you can look at that say a man age 30 to 44, if his results on this case study I'm looking at is, is down to 1.8. So if you're supposed to be 7 to 22 and you're 1.8, well, that's definite signs of imbalance, right? So your cortisol to DHEA ratio is going to be way off, and then suddenly we get more information that you're having breakdown over building up, so that balance. That's what we'll talk about too when we talk to Sim Land on fasting, that you have that cell autophagy, that breakdown, but you want that catabolic to be balanced with the anabolic, that building up. So same thing with your hormones. We can see there's too much cortisol over DHEA. All right, so let's touch on those other hormones. So we get your sex hormone levels from doing this saliva test. So we're also going to see sex hormones, the balances, and we'll explain difference of metabolic, the Western hormone balance versus what we look at. So the sex hormones indicate how valuable your steroid hormone pathways are right now. So that 4 measurements throughout the day, getting the cortisol snapshot, but we get a good snapshot of what's going on with your body. And that information provides that clinical correlation with your main health complaints. Say, as I said, example is digestion. So if your cortisol is off balance, your catabolic dominance, you more breakdown. And then I'll tell you some new thing I learned is melatonin is also a clue towards gut dysfunction, as 70% of your melatonin is made in your gut. The rest is made in your pineal gland that you use for your melatonin for sleeping, but it's pretty amazing. So what we get from the sex hormones on this lab test, your estradiol. So your estrogen, what we look at, let me scroll back up. Estrogen, we want to look at estradiol. We'll say a male is less than 2, and then we look at a woman based on her cycle. So it's going to be a little different, and that will give us information about estrogen dominance, because we're going to look at progesterone. And it's amazing. A lot of these case studies I'm looking at, say example, a male should be 75 to 100 on the progesterone. Well, this case client is 182. Now that would give me suspicions that there's something going on with his liver, because think about what we've talked about in previous episodes about your detoxification system, phase 1 and phase 2. And part of your detox, get rid of excess hormones. So if you're not detoxifying correctly, you might have a high hormone level. And then we also can get more information about high progesterone. Excess progesterone can contribute to sleepiness, decreased libido, mild depression, and candida infections. So needing more information on doing the stool testing would be good for that. So progesterone to estradiol ratio we look at too. So it's about 30 to 1 on there. So we want to look at what's ideal for males versus women and their different cycles. And then postmenopausal women are going to be different ranges. Then testosterone is everyone's favorite. Men should be 100 to 130 on our ranges for FDN, versus doctors will say 40 to 130. So our ranges are very different, much more narrower. Women in FDN ranges on testosterone should be 55 to 60, whereas traditional medicine will say 20 to 60. So we have a narrow range there, 55 to 60 for women. Testosterone, right? So how many people hormones are totally out of whack and imbalance? And what we'll get to next episode is not treating this by taking testosterone, not taking DHEA. You got to look at why your hormone's low. What's creating or contributing to the chaos of your hormones? It's all connected with the other 4 labs that we do. So we'll talk future episodes about talking about how this is all connected. Okay, so let me finish this lab and then we'll finish up today. So signs of low testosterone. So I look at people's lab, then I'll look at my sheet says here's, excess testosterone, which is rare unless you're supplementing, and then low. So low deficiency, I have my little notes I collected and researched. Low libido, foggy thinking, fatigue, muscle loss, bone loss, aches and pains, memory lapse, depressed, sleep problems, increased body fat, mood disorder, fogginess. So these symptoms that you can have correlate with a client's metabolic chaos score sheet in their health history, but we can see how these labs kind of put the whole picture, pieces of the puzzle together, I would say. So melatonin is the next one I'm going to finish up with. So melatonin is really interesting because it's a window into the gut function. So the sleep hormone that we hear about, melatonin, many people take at night, supplement with it. Well, it's also an indicator of your gut function, as I mentioned. So in our ranges, we look at 18 to 35 versus traditional medicine will say 12 to 35. But say a client, a lot of these case studies I'm looking at are low melatonin. So if you have a, say, 0.78 and we want you 18 to 35, whoa, that's really low. So what does that mean? Well, we don't treat it with just melatonin, we look at the whole picture. So that gives me more indication that there's something going on with this person's liver, because remember their progesterone was super high. They were at 182 when they should be 75 to 100. And then the melatonin is extremely low. I could use my own labs as an example because I have a similar really, really low melatonin. So melatonin, if you're super low, out of range, is correlation to gut function. So a melatonin, just to give you some facts, is made in the gut wall lining. It helps with digestion and elimination, helps protect the upper GI mucosal tissues, helps relax the muscles of the GI tract, increases muscular blood flow in irritable bowel syndrome. The pineal gland that we always hear about contributes to melatonin at night, but the gut maintains the baseline of melatonin over the 24-hour cycle. So low levels of melatonin may cause sleep issues, falling or staying asleep, resulting in fatigue or poor concentration. And it also may be a result, as I said, gut dysfunction or pineal gland issues, tissue issues, and prolonged exposure to that blue light that we talk about at night. Getting off our phones, cell phones, computers, using those Swannies glasses I posted about, those blue blockers help. But really, I find it more clue that, yeah, this person's having sleep issues. This person has digestion issues. So it gives me more clues to get more lab tests for him to figure out what's going on with his digestive system. So next call, we're going to talk about the 205 test that we're going to do, this BioHealth 205A, and then it'll give us, or no, this 205, the 105 gives us more information. But just to give you a touch on the 205, this hormone test, and then there's Dutch test I'll talk about in another month. That's a great test for hormones. It gives you a ton of information. And I'll be at a conference with the Dutch test. People will be there. So let's see if I can interview them for the show and give you more of the science behind it. But these hormone imbalances we can get can really correlate to digestion, our energy to exercise, reasons for muscle fatigue, or contributors to our thyroid issues, as I talked about. So taking this information, taking it with a scorecard we give clients on the metabolic chaos, looking at their functions in each area and looking at what phase they are in the progression of HPA Axis. We said a compensatory or acute phase or exhaustion phase. The cortisol dominance factor, if we have high cortisol to DHA ratio, we're going to be cortisol dominance, which will create catabolic breakdown in the body, not building up. So that's out of balance. And the hormones levels, if you're super high, elevated as progesterone or estrogen, we got to look at why. So the liver detoxification pathways I'd be curious about. And low testosterone. A lot of people have low sex drive, low muscle tone, and a lot of that's all connected to here. But again, don't just treat the testosterone, because you're still going to have continuous problems because you're just putting a Band-Aid on something by taking a supplement or a pill. You're not working on the whole picture. And then the melatonin really tells us a lot about gut function, as well as contributors to sleep issues. But also we're telling, if someone has poor sleep and wakes up in the middle of the night, that's also an indicator of gut dysfunction, because not just the low melatonin and high cortisol, but also connection to possible gut activity, immune activity. So I'd say, hey, you really should be doing the GI pathogen test as well, because I'm sure there's some hidden bad bacteria, pathogens, fungal infections, something going on that they're having a party while you're sleeping. So I kind of want to know what's going on in there, don't you? So the lab results, the health history, metabolic scorecard, put all that together and look at the whole picture of your hidden internal stressors and your contributors to your individual metabolic chaos. So we want to investigate further by getting the intestinal barrier function test, which is leaky gut, the GI pathogen test I just talked about, and I also mentioned the food sensitivity lab that we use, the MRT test, and we suggest people doing the metabolic typing test that you can go find online and pay, I think it's $79 to do this test to find out if you're a slow oxidizer or a fast oxidizer. And I also like people to test their blood glucose, as I said, and ketones with Keto Mojo, because that gives a lot of information. And then finally, I liked people to get their genetics tested using Ancestry DNA, upload that into Dr. Ben Lynch's program, or what Dr. Ben Rosenberg talked about in the earlier podcast. He talked about genetic testing program, how you can upload into their program he prefers to use for your raw data to get so much information, or DNA Fit out of London, the UK. They're pretty good people over there I've worked with. So I think all this information is really how you train the whole athlete to improve performance and longevity. Instead of just training as a low carb athlete, I would like you to work on your gut function, your liver function, and work on all of you. So how do you get started? Well, I do have my new program that I've done for 12 years is now online, the 30-day reset and reboot system. We work on a 5-day liver detox, and then we work on a 21-day sugar detox, which is focusing on improving your digestion, healing and rebuilding and repairing your digestive system. And then phase 3 is learning how to do this throughout real life, 80-20 rule, and doing it 5 times during the week and 2 days kind of off. And maybe that's your cyclical keto, whatever works for you to balance your blood sugar. The macronutrients, if I talked about previously, are always going to be a little different for each person. So I rambled on for an hour today, but that was just on one lab test and what metabolic chaos is, what are hidden chronic stressors. And then we'll talk next week about the lab test on what we say the BioHealth 101 test, and what the purpose of that test to measure so much information. I love this test. Super easy urine test to do, and it measures your endocrine, your lipid peroxides, your urinary bile acids, all of that. From one test, we can find out your digestion of protein, your oxidative stress, and your liver congestion and detoxification. So simple 2 labs you can start with when we do coaching if you're interested, or do the 5 labs to get real picture. All right, guys, that's it for today's show on Real Thoughts with Debbie Potts, talking about how to heal and rebuild the whole athlete from the inside out. So that is kind of the beginning of this new program, but we'll do this on Wednesdays and alternate with Peter Defty on optimal fat metabolism, and talk about Vespa and all of your questions you're asking on the website. So Fridays will be your time. So come on the show. Let me know when you want to be scheduled and what you have to share. Give you a little qualification interview before we come on the show and learn more about your journey. So reach out to me, debbiepotts.net, and we will get you where you want to go. So find me on Low Carb Athlete Instagram, Low Carb Athlete page on Facebook, and let's see what we can do to improve your performance and longevity for next year. And you want to start being fat adapted athlete now. Don't wait to do any of this in seasons if you're racing next year. All right, guys, until next time, aloha.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at wholeathletepodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.